Welcome back into the Play-by-Play, a sports media talk show from Awful Announcing, where, like Joel Embiid, we are not one of the top 100 players in the NBA, and we are not happy about it. I'm Brendon Kleen, staff writer at Awful Announcing. That's Ben Axelrod, senior editor at Awful Announcing. NBA opening week is here. We will give you all of our answers to our own most pressing questions. NBC versus Amazon. Who are we excited to see? Who are we already out on? What's the top storyline this year in the NBA likely to be? We'll get to all of it. Ben, let's go. Most exciting hire. Okay. We'll get into some of the business weeds, the viewership, some of that nerdy stuff that we like to do at Awful Announcing, but let's just hit it first here. Most exciting hire, whether it's ESPN, Amazon, or NBC, who is the person that you want to see the most starting this week on NBA coverage?
The one I am most excited for, and I'm frankly a little surprised it took him so long to land a regular job in the media, is Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin is one of those players you heard all throughout his playing career. Like, this guy has an incredible personality. He could be a legitimate stand-up comedian. Obviously, like, he was a major star during his playing days, especially during his time with the Clippers. And so now to put him in the Amazon studio and put him a part of that kind of headlining team, it seems like, with Taylor Rooks and Dirk Nowitzki and Steve Nash, I know is going to have kind of like a rotating role, but to put, Blake Griffin in a position that could position him as, like, I don't know, like the NBA's heir apparent to Charles Barkley down the line. Like, I think it's really a unique spot for him. And he is the one I've been excited about his media career dating back to his playing days. And so I'm just kind of pumped it's finally here.
Agree on all counts. He feels like the guy that Amazon, him and Dirk, are kind of the two. I think we're going to see them the most. They are first-timers. They're the probably most recognizable people. I mean, Dwyane Wade, obviously, but we don't know how much he'll be around. So I think it's going to be great. Blake, to me, this is making me think of a different question, because a lot of what you just said, you could have said about Draymond Green like 5 years ago. Is it just that Draymond is still in the NBA, that he didn't get in on this kind of like hiring cycle? If he could have been employed by TNT and has a podcast at the Volume, then why couldn't somebody bring him on for periodic hits this season? It feels like when I think of Blake Griffin, I almost immediately think he's kind of stealing Draymond Green's career a little bit in the media space.
Is Draymond still not with TNT? Did anything change with that?
So you think he could pop up on Inside the NBA? Is that what you're thinking?
I mean, that's what he's been doing. Like, he'll come on during the playoffs, or he'll have sparse opportunities. Sure, he kind of, it seems like, had the original Kyle Lowry type of deal. I didn't know if anything had changed there. I was under the impression he was under contract with TNT Sports, and that's just like, it's a way, as soon as he retires, he'll be there full time.
Well, just that doesn't really exist right now. I mean, it does. Is ESPN going to continue to pay up for Inside the NBA starring Draymond Green and Kenny Smith? Like, that's sort of, I don't know. No one really works there anymore outside of those four guys. So I hope you're right, because I think Draymond still has promise, but I'm not sure. I'll go to Michael Jordan as mine. We'll just talk about the big man right off the top here. I'm not necessarily excited in the way of like, I know it's going to be good. I'm excited to see what we are getting. And we got a little bit of information about that on Monday morning, where NBC announced Chris Collinsworth had teased it, of all people, last week on the Dan Patrick Show, and now it is basically official that it will be this sort of Inside the Mind of Michael Jordan series of pre-recorded videos, it seems like, where Mike Tirico will effectively interview MJ. And Ben, like, I have to just say, you'll hear me compliment Mike Tirico in a variety of other ways as the NBA season goes along and we get to the Olympics and, a Super Bowl next year and all those sorts of things. I think he's very good at what he does. That's not who I would have picked to guide us through the mind of Michael Jordan. if for no other reason than Mike Tirico hasn't covered the NBA in decades. So I think you kind of need some, and by the way, neither has Michael Jordan, right? So like, I think it would have been really good to have somebody who was really on their nuts and bolts to keep MJ on track. I'm a little nervous if it's going to be two guys who have been out of it for a while bouncing off of each other. I worry it's going to become generalities.
I'm very concerned about this segment. I'm concerned about the name MJ Insights to into greatness, into there's nothing about this that makes me think they're going to even be talking about the current NBA. Like, I'm worried this is going to be Mike Tirico interviewing Michael Jordan about like vague, like, what's it take to be great, Tom Brady, LFG type of stuff. Like, and if this is a thing where Mike Tirico isn't going to be asking Michael Jordan about like LeBron James, and that's like what I'm monitoring right away is like, does LeBron's name even ever come up? Because obviously there's some sort of schism there. I was writing this up for Awful Announcing just based off of the release, which was very, very vague. And I couldn't even put, knowing full well whether or not they're going to be covering like the current state of the game. And so I'm very, I think all of our kind of antennas went up with everything that's been attached to this, because they were very quick to make it clear that it's going to be a limited role for Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And the fact that we are still getting such limited information about what these segments are going to be, I'm just concerned that there is not a world where they meet any sort of expectation for Michael Jordan being a part of their NBA coverage.
By the way, it's hilarious that we can say all this and have skepticism about how plugged into the modern NBA Michael Jordan is, considering he owned an NBA team as recently as like 3 years ago. And yet we still look at him as somebody where it's like, does he really quite have his finger on the pulse?
Well, did you see those Hornets rosters? I think that's a fair, that was a fair question to ask based off of his ownership experience.
Exactly. Okay. One more bigger picture question before we get to some of the nuts and bolts again. And I think maybe if the audience is here, it might be helpful to have people get a rundown of where these games are even going to be played. So we'll get there, and whether that's good or bad, or how that'll affect just kind of the consumption of the sport this year. But more intriguing roster to you, NBC or Prime Video? ESPN's going to be relatively the same. Bob Myers left. We'll talk about Tim Legler getting a promotion. Inside the NBA will be there. We know what that is. Obviously, they're about as sure of a thing as you can get. But between the newcomers, who are you more intrigued by? Who do you want to watch more? What's getting you more excited for the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I mean, from a roster standpoint, I am more interested in Amazon. I just think Amazon, one, like just the plethora of talent that they have accumulated for the number 3 tier package, as we've talked about on this show. How are they going to fit them all in? It's a lot of newer analysts. I think everybody at NBC, by and large, aside from Carmelo Anthony, like, has established media careers. They're just going to a new network. Like, Amazon has a lot of new guys, including Kyle Lowry. So between Blake, between Dirk, between Steve Nash, I mean, those are 3 of their headliners, and those are 3 people who are relatively inexperienced when it comes to the media space. And so I'm more interested in Amazon from a talent standpoint. From a presentation standpoint, I'm more interested in NBC, just in terms of how do they're clearly leaning into the nostalgia. They're clearly leaning into their 90s. I think even you look at the talent roster they have, it's a lot of 90s basketball players plus Carmelo Anthony. So I'm interested to see how they strike that balance. But from a talent standpoint, for me, it's Amazon.
It's fascinating to me that NBC, I agree with you. Prime Video has my attention far more. I mean, we were praising them about Thursday Night Football a couple of weeks ago, and how much they've aced that test, and the talent speaks for itself. And yet, NBC ended up with the single game analyst that I was most excited to see where they landed, and that's Jamal Crawford. I think Jamal Crawford was incredible on TNT it was now 2 years ago. He kind of was on a hiatus last year as he transitioned out of TNT, but he did some Knicks games. But I thought he was really, really good and rose very quickly from like the Tuesday off-brand inside show to basically the top booth for the conference finals there. I think he's going to be awesome, and I'm very excited. I also think Carmelo could, like, there's a world where Carmelo is a consistent viral, like, newsmaker if he wants to be. Now, I've watched his podcast, and he it's hit or miss as to how incisive and direct he really wants to be, how critical he wants to be, whatever, you know. Like with LeBron, for instance, he's kind of shown himself to be similar to Dwyane Wade, somebody who it's kind of off limits to be critical or really analytical about LeBron. You know, I think, but Melo could very much chart his own course there and be the best of all these guys. I mean, he's obviously well known and smart and successful and legendary, but does he want to do that, or does he want to just be another guy? We'll see. Okay. The schedule, Ben. What do you think of the league has already been putting out this graphic with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, with all the logos, trying to reinforce the awareness of this. I got to talk with the head of the NBA app last week about the program that they're rolling out called Tap to Watch, where on the NBA app, on social media platforms, they're really going to be hammering a one-click link-based thing where if you engage with NBA content, you can literally just hit that button and be transported over to the app where these games are going to air. It's all good, but I've also seen a ton of skepticism and worry that, like, is it just going to be too much for people, given that it's been 20 years where it's like TNT, Tuesday, Thursday, ESPN, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I don't have to think about it. How much do you think that will actually factor into, like, lower ratings or negative blowback and publicity, or do you think it'll be relatively quick adjustment for people?
Yeah, I think it will take some time. I don't think it'll be a quick adjustment, but I do think we will get there. It's just going to be different because you are now introducing like a third regular partner in Amazon. So we were so used to like our routine being based on ESPN and TNT, and that was kind of it. And then now you introduce Amazon, you introduce obviously the streaming element with not only Amazon, but also the Peacock exclusive games. It's going to take an adjustment, but I do think I could see a world in which it's beneficial to the NBA, where it kind of like regulates your schedule in a way that the NFL, I think, benefits from, where obviously the NFL games are all in consecutive days. But I could see a world where we're thinking, okay, Monday's time for the Peacock game, Saturday's time for the Amazon game. Like, I don't think that's too out there, but I do think it is going to take some time. And I do think, I mean, this is a lot of streaming exclusives, which is something the NBA didn't have before. And so I do think the idea of introducing that, and not only just that, but doing it with two different partners, I do think that if there's any sort of confusion, if there's any sort of blowback, I would expect that that's where it's going to stem from.
The other thing, though, too, is the league is there's at least national games every night. That wasn't really true a lot of weeks before. And, the part that people leave out when they say, oh, it used to just be ESPN and TNT and it was easier to keep track of, you're leaving out the fact that NBA TV had games on like Mondays and Saturdays a lot of the time that people just didn't even pay attention to. Nobody really even cared. And that's why it's not remaining in our memories as we like talk about the difference. But, if you're asking me, is it easier for me to access or the general public to access / do I think the numbers will be bigger for like Peacock or Prime Video versus NBA TV? I mean, I think we all know what the answer to that is, right? It's clearly the streaming services, even if Peacock is somewhat smaller. So I think people will adjust to it quickly. And I think that, it'll just be up to the streamers to kind of keep themselves front of mind. The other part I would say though, too, is like, in other countries, Prime Video has already become a regular recurring tuning in destination for things. Thursday Night Football is one thing because it's once a week, but like they have Canadian rights to NHL games, they have Premier League games in Europe and Champions League games, and those are big must-watch events that clearly people over there in those other countries have had no difficulty remembering or knowing how to access or any of that kind of stuff. So I think it's a little overblown.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the Thursday Night Football thing, you already have your entryway in. It's like if you're the type of sports fan who is going to put national NBA games on your calendar that you want to watch, like I would imagine you're also the type of sports fan who watches Thursday Night Football. So it's just like there's not that barrier for entry that there was for the NFL, 2 or 3 years ago when they entered into this.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Tim. Well, actually, last thought. I'll just say, like, numbers on some of these more regular games for Amazon or Peacock. Well, Peacock hasn't really had them, although there are some, I believe, Premier League games that are Peacock exclusive. And Prime Video has like Yankees games and the WNBA Commissioner's Cup. I tried to Google around to see, like, have we ever seen numbers on these non-event games for these streamers? And the answer is basically no, which tells me they're probably not very high. And so I think the numbers will be pretty unremarkable at the beginning, and they probably will need to grow from a bad starting point, would be my prediction. All right, ESPN, Ben, we haven't really hit this, I don't think, too much since it happened. Tim Legler getting the bump up to the top booth alongside Richard Jefferson. I think we kind of talked around it because it was one of those stories that took a long time to get to a final destination, but we are here. They will debut on Wednesday night for ESPN's first doubleheader of the season. What are your expectations there? Does this feel permanent to you? Does this feel better to you? Or are we going to be continuing to have the what will ESPN do in its NBA booth conversation all season long?
I think it follows the let's see if this works strategy that ESPN has basically been deploying since they laid off Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy in 2023. It's, throw Doc Rivers in there, throw JJ Redick in there, throw Doris Burke in there. Like, let's just like throw together a bunch of options and see if something sticks. This one could stick. I think they have to be really good though. Like, this is not a booth that's going to get by on its star power, obviously. And I think another interesting angle to all of this is Chris Paul is effectively, right? Chris Paul has said this is his last season playing in the NBA. He has ties to ESPN. He's done conference finals work for them. Chris Paul is going to be like a name who enters broadcasting a year from now. And he has the kind of star power. I think he's been good enough that he could make that jump. And it would not shock me if Chris Paul was calling the 2027 NBA finals for ESPN. So that's out there. But I also think this booth could just be good enough. And I think ESPN is so desperate just for like a solution to all of this. And the idea of, not, going into like 5 different NBA finals with 5 different booths is just kind of crazy. So I think they would love for this to be the solution. But it doesn't feel permanent to me, to answer your question.
I would have to think that Doris Burke took note of the fact that as soon as Tim Legler got the promotion, there's suddenly a entire digital and television series dedicated to him interviewing and breaking down film with NBA coaches. Like, they've embraced him in a way that they did not in quite an all-encompassing way with Doris, and I don't know what there is. Maybe he just went out and seized that opportunity or pitched it to them. You never know how these things play out behind the scenes, but that was a signal to me that, there is energy. Almost everybody at ESPN has a million ideas like that never happened, and he had one happen already. So that should tell you something. Let's go to thing you're already out on. What's something going on in the NBA media this year that you are just like, that's not going to work, whether it's a talent hire or a quirk of how a broadcaster or a network is doing something, or even, some podcast idea. Whatever comes to mind. What do you think Local broadcasts. Anything coming to mind? I have one if you need a minute here, Ben.
Yeah, go to yours.
Okay. Mine is this Peacock innovation where they're going to try to have their game analysts sitting near the benches of the teams. I can't remember exactly what they're calling it, like inside the game or something along those lines. And I mean, how it's awful. We work at Awful Announcing. How often do we cover, whether it's Ben Johnson or anyone else, getting prickly with the media in the heat of a big game or even the aftermath of a big game? I just don't think it's going to go over well for these analysts to be poking their heads into huddles or trying to get these insights. And I actually don't even think, and this isn't even about them, but I think it's Austin Rivers and Robbie Hummel who are doing it. Do we really think those guys are going to go to extreme lengths to bother the players and coaches? No, they're players. They don't want to disrupt anything. It feels like it's going to be them doing a regular color commentary job and just sitting somewhere else. I think that's what it's going to devolve into and kind of end up being like relatively useless.
Yeah. My first instinct was I am out on the loss of Ryan Russillo on Bill Simmons' podcast. I already missed him on the Over-Unders pod as Zach Lowe took, I think, every over in the Eastern Conference, but that's neither here nor there. I'd really like local rights to get like kind of figured out here. I've had a tough time locally with the Cavs. I had to buy like the FanDuel Sports, like the streaming service. They were not the FanDuel, whatever our local FanDuel is, the FanDuel network was not included in my, I have a pretty, I don't have the low level spectrum tier. I have like a mid to upper spectrum tier, and we didn't have FanDuel included in it. So it's like, it shouldn't still be this difficult. And I've had this issue with the Cavs for probably 5 or 6 years now, where like I can never get them on just a traditional cable package. So it seems like they are like the league, and just like baseball is kind of trying to get its ducks in a row when it comes to the local rights. But I'd really like for that to get figured out, because it just seems crazy in 2025 to have more hurdles to watch the local team than we had even 10 years ago.
We've heard a lot less about the NBA getting its ducks in a row on that than we have with MLB, where it's like very front of mind. Like the NBA just kind of did this media deal and let that hang. So I don't know where that's even really what the state of affairs are. Adam Silver hasn't really discussed it. We're just kind of in limbo, it feels like. I'm lucky in Phoenix, it's on free over-the-air TV. Yeah. They did a good deal early and stuck that out, and they got compensated really handsomely for it recently. But yeah, a lot of places it's just like you're paying for this one random thing just to watch your NBA team, and that's a big ask for people. Okay. Let's go to predicting the top storyline. So this can be on the court, in the league, like something if you want to put your NBA analyst hat on for a minute, Ben, or it can be something where, you know, like last year, the ratings and the face of the league thing just became the story. Because I think because the rights, the TV rights were kind of up, because the finals and the parity conversation keep going, and people are wondering about what that will mean for popularity if teams like the Pacers and these not famous teams keep breaking through. So that was like clearly the top storyline in my mind last year. But maybe something bad. Hey, maybe they get lucky and actual basketball becomes what we talk about with the NBA this year. That would certainly be nice for everybody. What do you think it's going to be?
There are two that come to mind. And one, I think you already started to kind of see take shape in the aftermath of the NBA Finals. And I think it's just going to be like, could the Thunder be a dynasty? Like, I think the Thunder are going to just like be a great regular season team. And I think that, you know, and then there's the whole small market element to that. And like, would it be good for the NBA to have a dynasty in Oklahoma City? Why isn't Shai Gilgeous-Alexander more marketable? Why? Like, I just think it's good. The core of it is going to be the Thunder are an emerging dynasty. And then you're going to have all these branches about like what that means for the league. The other one is it's something LeBron James related, and it's either going to be whatever this power struggle that went on with the Lakers is that bleeding into this season, or it's going to become clear that this is LeBron James's last season and that this is a retirement tour now. And I actually think, like, with the injury and he's going to be 41 years old in December. Like, it would not shock me at all if it emerged that this is his final season. And I don't think he's going to do that one quietly. So those are the two that stick out to me.
Man, I would really be bummed if it felt like next year would be his last to me, because I think he wants to go out on his own terms. And in a weird way, this Luka thing has made it not his own terms, even though it's a blessing for the Lakers as a franchise. So I thought, play this last year of his contract out, and then he'll do one more and be done. Especially because Bryce could be in the league next year, right?
Right. Yeah.
But now it's like, well, if he's slogging through the season and hardly able to play, what would next year even look like? Like, if the sciatica thing goes really badly, how many games does he even play this year, let alone next year? And then are you just doing it for, like, the ceremonial, like you're a piñata or like a mascot or whatever, to go out there and be a decoration for the whatever team and just get a plaque at all the arenas, but not actually play basketball? Like, I hope it doesn't go that way, because I at least want a real goodbye for LeBron, as obnoxious as it's obviously going to be. I mean, we all know that.
Right.
I think I'm still rooting for it. Okay. Mine is, I actually we have Radio Star Killer in the chat here, and he said Ballmer and the integrity of the league. I think that's actually a very real possibility. It's not going away. The Wall Street Journal just had another, scoop-filled feature on the aspiration Kawhi Leonard sponsorship saga that keeps delivering headlines, and that it just can't go away. The media is not going to allow it to. So whether the whole investigation comes to a head and a punishment is doled out this season, I'm not sure, because the league doesn't seem like it's in too big of a hurry to do that. But I do think we'll keep hearing about it. Mine is, and this is a little optimistic, but mine is Victor Wembanyama. I just think this could finally be the year where it's just undeniable. It's a daily, whether it's, you go on Instagram and there's a new thing, YouTube, there's a new story about him every week. Like, he keeps growing. It just feels like this perfect sweet spot where a younger person who's kind of a casual follower of the league is gonna know and hear about him. The older folks are gonna, have a historical perspective. Oh, he's Kareem and he's KD together, and he might actually be on a winning team this year, so it'll be more of a real conversation versus just something that the nerds are paying attention to. I don't think they're going to win the championship or anything. They're a young team and all that. The over-under is like 43.5 for them or something. But this could be the year where he's just an inevitable, inarguable part of just the league is about him.
I mean, it's go time, right? Like, it's like he's this fascinating prospect. He, has been as good as advertised on the court. Obviously had the injury that derailed last season, but it's like, all right, if you're going to be a top 8 player, like a consensus top 8 player, whatever people are viewing him as now, it's like, it's time to start playing in important games. Like, it's like, we can't do this is so amazing, this is so fascinating. Like, we can only do that for so long. It's time to, like, get the Spurs in the, I'm not even talking about the conference finals, get in the playoffs, like, play in important games, play in the playoff series. Like, it's time for that now. So I think, look, this is only year 3. So, like, I don't think it's like anything where he's behind schedule, but I think you look at the other players who have become cornerstones of the league. This is around the time where it went from, okay, like, cute fascination to, like, okay, actual NBA player who were having real conversations about the league and your place in the league.
I have a quick this year's Sam Darnold for you.
Okay.
That is NBA related. We established this segment a couple of shows ago. It is something that I just need more information about from the national reporters who cover a sport, a league, a team, whatever. And in this case, I just feel like I never really got a great answer for why the Indiana Pacers made the conference finals and finals in back-to-back seasons and were a real deal team. Like, obviously, I watched the games. Tyrese Halliburton's great. I get it. But it's such a historical anomaly to have a team do that, even given the Eastern Conference not being quite as good as others. And it's like, oh, they run, they're tough, they're versatile, yada, yada, okay. But it feels like, my honest feeling is like even the smartest people covering the NBA don't really know what the fuck was going on with the Pacers. Like, they're shocked about it and don't have an answer for me.
Yeah, and I'm not like a smart basketball person, but like my theory on it, just watching last year's run, is their roster is like so uniquely balanced where Tyrese is obviously the star and they have like that alpha, but like all of the secondary guys like Mathurin and Neesmith, like all these guys, like they're not that far off where most teams are. It's like, okay, we have our star and then there's a big drop off to the rest of I don't know. Like, I can't think of it either because you're right. It's such a historical outlier, but they were such a fascinating team to follow. And I think even, without Tyrese, they still possess the potential to be interesting to follow.
Very fun story, very cool identity, very watchable team. We didn't understand why Sam Darnold suddenly became an NFL quarterback. We don't understand why the Indiana Pacers are suddenly like a powerhouse as long as Halliburton recovers, and there you have it. Hot mic to close us out, Ben. I'm going to take over the segment this week and just go straight to Billy Gill leaving the Dan Le Batard show with Stugotz, although we'll put that last with Stugotz in parentheses or in italics or with a format text strike through for now, because that is also up in the air here on the Le Batard show. But I don't know. I think Billy was probably the most consistently enjoyable part of that show for me, and the most singular, unusual, specific, identifiable thing about what made that show that show. And it's really hard to imagine the show without him. And obviously it's a little niche. We have a lot of people who probably follow this show or follow us and our work who are from that community. So we talk about the very granular things here more than maybe other shows would. But what did you think? You wrote about it. You saw the news come down. I was still probably sleeping when it popped up last week. But thoughts?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. You mentioned like how many people pay attention to it. That story did, very well traffic wise, which I think caught, some of us off guard just in terms of like, this isn't Stugotz, this isn't Dan, this isn't even, necessarily like one of the title characters on the show. It's technically a producer, even though he was clearly a on-air contributor for the better part of the last 10 years, but clearly has a big following. So I've been following the Le Batard show in some form since like 2011, 2010. Like Billy, to me, like the fact that he emerged from, basically intern, I think, to low-level producer to regular cast member, like with merch and with like the Guillermo Mafia, and then going on to host God Bless Football with Stugotz, like his rise really kind of just like embodied the rise of the show through the mid through 2010s. And I think what they did with him as a character, like in terms of his ability to play it straight, but also play it silly, like he was just kind of a jack of all trades. I think he like really embodied kind of the ethos of what many people would consider to be like the golden era of that show. And so it's, it's not a surprise to me he's leaving. That Meadowlark has obviously undergone a ton of changes over the course of the last year, and the shipping container has kind of been in flux. But this is, the first like real, like he was with them pre-ESPN. He was with them through ESPN. He was with them at Meadowlark. So this isn't, with all due respect to like Jessica Smetana, who's only been there for the Meadowlark days, like this was like a core member of the last 15 years of this show. And so for him to leave, he's taking a, predominantly off-air management position with Spotify and The Ringer. Like Dan said, like it's bittersweet, but he definitely, his like if they do the oral history of the show again, like he's obviously a huge part of it. And so, yeah, a very significant moment for us, Dan Le Batard show aficionados.
For sure. I mean, like, you can love or hate the show, feel however you want. Maybe you like certain periods of it better than others, whatever, but it truly is a groundbreaking and innovative thing to come out of radio and podcasting that opened up the floodgates for a whole new type of content in the space we cover. And they, they have this thing of like, you don't get the show. They don't say it so much anymore, but they used to. And I think Billy and Mike got the show better than the hosts did, right? Like the show was what it was because of those two guys more than Dan or Stu. And so to lose one of those, it's going to be pretty. I mean, the show already doesn't even feel like it used to, but it's definitely going to feel different now. And to be able go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Billy's like, his kind of claim to fame was, right, he was Stugatz' producer. Like, he was the one responsible for Stugatz. He helped, I think, really shape the Stugatz character as they entered those golden years at ESPN in the early days of Meadowlark. And so to bring this to what you alluded to earlier, like without Stugatz on the show, his role became very different as well.
For sure. And the final thought would be like, to develop something so eccentric and smart and kind of boundary pushing like that show was in its best days, which again has so many imitators and kind of a descendants of its own that are now all over sports media, it can be easy to look at it and say like, well, they were just goofing around. But I think that discounts like the level of awareness of what to like parody something. You have to know what it is you're parodying to such a level that, and I think that's what Billy had so well is like, you might listen and you would think it was just somebody shooting the shit or trying to tease or whatever. But it was, the more you would listen, you would realize it's intentional, right? And so I hope that there's a way, it's hard to imagine that there would be a way to kind of transport that to other people. But I hope that, him going to The Ringer and Spotify, like there's a way to kind of breathe that type of spirit into other people. And I would love there to be a bunch of other Billies that come up because he's one of one, and anything close to that would be very cool to see kind of cross through the rest of sports media. So I'm rooting for it.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, that'll wrap us up. Hit follow, hit subscribe. We're here for you live at 2 p.m. Eastern every single Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, for the most part. Sometimes some extra content if the news delivers for us. Enjoy your Monday. We'll catch you tomorrow.